Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Many of the stories I've been telling you about my life have not been very happy ones. Living on the street is a challenge. However, there were many people who helped, which is why I'm still here today. This is a collection of stories about the people who helped. They weren't always heroes in the traditional sense. They didn't wear capes or have their own lives perfectly put together. Sometimes the people who save us are barely keeping their own heads above water. Today, I want to talk about a man named Bill. Bill was my friend Tess's dad. I started living at their place after roaming the streets of Azusa, after leaving what I call my storm home in Covina. If you've ever lived in a storm home, you know exactly what I mean. It's a place where the air pressure is always dropping, where the screaming matches roll in like thunder, and the chaos makes it impossible to find your footing. I had to get out of the storm. I was young, but I'd already been away from home for a couple of years. I had learned how to make myself small, how to blend into the wallpaper, and how to survive on the margins of other people's lives. When I found Tess's place, it was known as the Crash House, and a beautiful thing about the Crash House was that it didn't ask questions. It didn't ask where you'd been. It didn't ask where you were going, or why you had a bruise on your arm, or why your little bag was the only thing you owned. You could just exist inside it. I slipped in like a stray cat that had found an open window in the dead of winter. At first, it felt like an absolute miracle. There was always someone on the couch. There was always someone in the kitchen. There was always someone sitting on the front steps, smoking cheap cigarettes and talking like the night would never end. The screen door slapped shut 100 times a day, a constant rhythm of lost people coming and going. The refrigerator was usually empty, but for some reason we were always pulling the door open, staring into the harsh yellow light, looking to see inside like maybe a miracle would occur overnight. We survived on whatever showed up. A bag of groceries someone would bring by randomly, a greasy paper bag of fast food somebody else bought, and sometimes nothing at all. But even when there was nothing to eat, there was safety in numbers. The reason the house functioned at all, the reason it hadn't completely descended into chaos, was Tess's mom. Tess's mom had been the glue. She was the rule maker. She was the one adult in that place who still believed boundaries mattered even for a bunch of strays. She had a few simple rules, but they were ironclad. No drugs inside. Don't wake the neighbors. Don't bring real trouble through the front door. She loved us in a tough, no-nonsense kind of way. She held the walls up. And then she died. When she died, the glue dissolved. Overnight, the structure of the house just turned to dust. Bill, Tess's dad, tried to keep things together. I really need you to understand that. Bill was, at his core, a profoundly good man. He had a gentle heart. But grief is a funny, terrible thing. It doesn't always make you angry. Sometimes it just empties you out. And after his wife passed away, Bill seemed to completely lose control of his life. The anchor was gone, and he was adrift. He started sitting in the living room, sinking into this worn-out armchair, just staring at the television. But he wasn't really watching it. The blue light would wash over his face, reflecting in his eyes, but he was looking right through the screen. It was like he was sitting in a waiting room, waiting for someone to tap him on the shoulder and tell him what he was supposed to do next. But nobody ever did. After that, the house didn't belong to a family anymore. The warmth was gone. It belonged to whoever needed it most that day. That's when the people started drifting through like weather. Different faces, different stories, blowing in and blowing out. The rules were gone. The boundaries were gone. But through it all, Bill remained in that chair. And here is why Bill is the focus of this story. Because despite his paralyzing, suffocating grief, he let me stay. To some people, that might not sound like much. He wasn't sitting me down to give me life advice. He wasn't helping me apply for jobs or checking to see if I was okay. He was barely surviving himself. But to me, at that time in my life, what he did was monumental. He gave me a roof. He gave me a corner of the world where I didn't have to look over my shoulder. He provided a physical sanctuary when the rest of my world was a hurricane. And it wasn't just the shelter. Bill shared whatever he had. Food wasn't easy to come by in that house, but every now and then, Bill would emerge from his fog. He'd come across some food, maybe he had managed to go to the store, or maybe someone had brought something by, and he never hoarded it. If there was a dented can of soup, a half-empty box of generic cereal, or a few slices of bread, he made sure it was left out where we could find it. It wasn't often, it wasn't a feast, but every single little bit helped. I'd walk into the kitchen, see a sleeve of crackers left deliberately on the counter, and I knew it was Bill's way of saying, "I see you. I know you're hungry. Take this." He was a good man trapped in a dark place, but his goodness still leaked out in these quiet, desperate ways. Just the simple act of not kicking me out into the street was a grace I will never, ever forget. I was a stray cat, and he refused to close the window. But houses like that, crash houses, they can't last forever. The weather eventually has to break. The shift happened when Tess got pregnant. When Tess had her baby, everything changed. You can't have a house full of drifting teenagers and 20-somethings surviving on nothing, but you cannot bring a newborn baby into that environment either. The universe suddenly demanded order. I knew it was my time to go. The space was no longer meant for me. It needed to be a home again, not a shelter for strays. I picked up the few things I owned, and I moved out to make room for this new life. But the arrival of that baby did something else. It woke Bill up. He couldn't sit in front of the television anymore. He couldn't wait for someone to tell him what to do. There was a tiny, fragile human being in the house that shared his blood, that looked like his late wife, that needed him. So Bill stepped up. He fought his way through the grief, pushed away the heavy blanket of sorrow, and he took charge. He became the dad and the grandfather he needed to be. It was the hardest thing he probably ever had to do, but he did it. Shortly after I moved out, Bill and Tess packed up. They moved completely out of town, leaving the crash house and all its ghosts behind to start fresh somewhere new, somewhere safe for the baby. Because of the move and the chaotic nature of my own life at the time, I eventually lost touch with Tess. The threads that connected us simply unraveled as we went our separate ways into adulthood. I don't know where they are today. I don't know what kind of teenager or adult that baby grew up to be. But I think about Bill all the time. I think about the fact that sometimes the greatest help you can give someone doesn't require a grand gesture. Sometimes helping someone just means letting them exist in your space while you're both trying to survive. Bill was drowning, but he let me hold on to the life raft. To Bill, wherever you are, thank you for not closing the window. If you or someone you know is currently experiencing housing instability, running from a storm house, or struggling to cope with overwhelming grief, please know that you don't have to drift alone. There is help out there, and there are people ready to listen. If you're in the United States, you can call or text the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline at 988, available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you are a young person facing homelessness or need a safe place to crash, please reach out to the National Runaway Safe Line at 1-800-RUNAWAY. That's 1-800-786-2929 or visit 1-800-runaway.org. You deserve a safe place to land. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.